What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. Before I get started with this topic, some of you guys have noticed that I took a couple videos down, and I did, right? So later on today, in fact, after this, I'm gonna record a video explaining why, why I took down the video regarding Snoop, and why I took down the video regarding Salinas Valley and Silent from the NF. But I wanted to put this out there first. It's breaking news, exclusive. It's also something I've been kind of stewing on since I first heard about it. Many of you are aware that there was a Emero, a Mexican Mafia member that got booked in High Desert by a Crip, right, by a black guy Crip, and that was some time ago. That was some months back, and many of you are aware that Crip showed up in Salinas Valley, you know, and that the South approached the blacks, the Crips at least, and was like, hey, you got to deal with that, right? Like, he can't be on the yard. He booked our big homie, blah blah blah, and they were basically shut down and told no. That was between those two individuals. It got handled how it handled, and we're moving on in life. Uh, well, things changed last night. Things changed last night in the dayroom at Salinas Valley when the South rushed that Crip and other Crips, of course, in the day room, and that dude wound up getting blasted. He's gonna be fine. He got poked, but it's not life threatening or anything crazy. I'm aware of two day rooms, I believe, in which this happened, right? In which the South attacked the blacks. I don't know about the other ones. The details are still coming out. This was yesterday evening, right? Like just before 7 o'clock that it kicked off. And so I don't want to put out false information. I am pretty sure that there was other brothers involved besides just the Crips. I'm also pretty sure that there was no other raza involved except for the Southsiders. But again, I'm only pretty sure about those things. Um, I'm sure we'll find out more details as they come along. But I think this is important for a couple reasons. I don't come on here and do breaking news anytime there's violence in prison. That's prison. Let prison deal with prison. But I think this is interesting to say the least. And my concern is that this could lead to a racial conflict. And I hope that it doesn't. I hope that this doesn't lead to a war between the South and the blacks. Now, the South and the Crips probably got some stuff to deal with, right? I hope that this doesn't go any further. I hope that there's no more violence. The odds that it stops here, if we're being honest, is pretty slim, based on what I'm hearing. Um, I hope that if it does become a South black issue, that it stays a South black issue and doesn't grow to a black brown issue. But I'm not optimistic. That's my hope. But based on what we've been seeing in recent years, and based on kind of the narrative, what we do know is elsewhere in Salinas Valley, Norteños have told the brothers, hey, if the South, and you guys get off and it's one fraction of blacks, one faction of blacks and the Southsiders, and it stays that way, then that's not our business. If another faction of brothers gets involved, then us as Norteños are going to jump to the South's defense. Which just the concept of that is so game goofy to me, if I'm being honest. And I'm going to be very blunt in this, and I hope that you guys realize I'm not advocating violence, promoting violence. I never do that, okay? But I'm going to keep it real. The idea that you could have Norteños in the California Department of Corrections shedding blood, going to war with Africanos, with the blacks, because a black dude booked an Emero is mind-boggling to me, right? First of all, and I'm not gonna put the Crips name out there. I'm not gonna put that stuff out there. I haven't and I won't. I got a pretty good idea. But I'm not going there. But what I will say is this. I feel comfortable saying this. The Crip behind this, boy, that dude's done a lot of time. This is not some young gang-banging guy, some hothead that just flew off the handle and booked somebody. Not at all. Not at all. This dude's been around a long time. He's a pretty level-headed guy. He's also a convict. He done more time than a handful, at least, of the people watching this, right? And I know my viewership audience is not teenagers, you know, it's older. This was something that had been brewing or whatever, and it happened. It wasn't a gang thing. It wasn't a race thing. It was one disrespectful ass dude who stepped out of line one too many times with somebody who could only take so much, and gave him what he earned, right? In that world, in that context. So the fact that this is blowing up into something more, it ain't really cool. Anyways, although I'm not surprised because it's an Emerald, right? It's a Mexican Mafia member, and God forbid, you know, them big guys get touched. And the same true for the NF2, you know, and I'm gonna get to that. So I'm not surprised that this has happened. I hope it doesn't go further. But again, the idea that you could have Norteños beefing with blacks because a black dude stabbed a Mexican Mafia member, it bothers me. It upsets me. And granted, it hasn't happened, and I hope that it doesn't happen. But I feel for the homeboys on the yard, right? The Northerners on the yard. It is easy for me to speak from the comfort of my couch, right? I can, you know, pontificate about whatever. And I fully understand that those behind the wall are in a different situation. But a lot of you guys that watch this have identified as a Norteño in the past, or currently still do, right? Or familiar with that walk, should we say. Tell me this shit don't bother you. Tell me the idea of this happening doesn't upset you. Let alone the reality of it if it winds up happening, right? Who are you then? What do you stand for? If you let the NF tell it, right? The NF historia is Norteño's very existence is predicated on pushing back against the MA, pushing back against the Mexican Mafia, security against the Mexican Mafia, protecting people from the Mexican Mafia. That's the NF story. That's what we were taught, right? When we were in prison. That's not why we got involved in the streets. 99% of us, we got involved in the streets because we're gang members. We're from the neighborhood, and we happen to be from Northern California, and that's how it played out, right? So let's not over romanticize how we get caught up in the mix. But you go do some time, or you get around people that have done some time, and you learn a version of history. And that version of history is very, very simple. It's a very clear line on who the good guys and the bad guys are. Now, I don't gangbang, right? I'm from Northern California. I'm proud of that. I love it. I stand on it. I got a lot of love for people from Southern California. I got no issue with Southsiders whatsoever, right? I got no issue with people being proud of where they're from. You know, if you're from Northern California, be proud of that. You're from Southern California, be proud of that. You're from Wisconsin, be proud of that, right? Like, I don't care. That's normal behavior. It's normal for people to identify with where they come from. It's odd to come from somewhere and then identify with somewhere else, but it's not odd to identify with your own soil, your own roots, okay? It gets criminalized in the brown community and to a degree in the black community, but it's not wrong. So this isn't like all of a sudden rascals against Southsiders or wants North-South beef. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, I'm not advocating violence. Got no beef with Southsiders. I got no real beef with the Mexican Mafia because I'm not in the mix anymore. But let's be clear about who the opposition was when I, myself, and a lot of us were in the mix. And it was them. That was the op. That was the enemy. Right? More so than the Southsider. It was them. And let's be clear about who we had tables next to on the yard. It was the blacks. Now, we run a different program than the blacks. The blacks run various programs within each other, right? So I'm not saying that it would make sense for the North to go to war against the South over the blacks either, right? It's just their own politics, their own agenda. But I thought the North had their own politics and their own agenda too. And if that agenda is now, you're going to throw away decades of a relationship and decades of a history. And there's been issues between Norteños and blacks over the years, of course, right? And that's fine, but over this, really, what's that look like for the streets? You know, what's that look like when you're from the Bay Area? You grew up around black people, and to be clear, a lot of Raza down south grew up around black people too. But the idea of Southerners and blacks having beef is not new. Like in terms of in the institutional context, that is generational, right? As generational as Norteños not beefing with the blacks like that in the institutions, right? We beef with the woods. So that, I get that, but I'm just speaking about Northern California. You from the Bay, you gonna get off on some Bay cats? Because a Crip that's been down longer than you probably been alive book somebody that got overly disrespectful on multiple occasions, and that dude happens to be a Mexican Mafia member, well, guess what, bro? You gotta play by the rules too. You gotta be responsible for your actions too, and he was held accountable for it. It's really, if you're from Sacramento, Stockton, right, these other areas where there's a lot of black and brown coexistence, you know what I mean? You a homeboy from Sac, you gonna get off on a blood or a Crip from Sac over this? See, I'm for unity, but what are we unifying around? Well, I say we, but you know what I mean. Obviously, I'm outside the mix. I'm outside the picture. But what is this unity around? Is it just racial pride? Just, you know, brown people against everybody? Brown supports brown across the board? Okay, well, if that's the case, how come my homeboys got murdered in prison by brown folks, by the NF, right? If we just all about the brown. So that's not the case. It's not racial unity for the sake of brown pride. That's the narrative that some people like to push, but it's not. If that was the case, how come the Bulldogs ain't in the mix? A lot of them are brown, but they don't count, right? Like, so it's not brown pride. It's these organizations, right? I love the end of hostilities in terms of North and South. I love that North and South are no longer beefing for no real reason. I love it. And I will continue to love it. I don't love the idea of this. And again, it hasn't happened. And I hope that it doesn't happen. I hope this is an isolated incident. You know, everybody over there is on lockdown now, a little 24-hour kind of threat assessment thing. And I hope when the threat assessment's over, it's a normal program and everything goes back to what it is. But there's going to be another incident at some point, right? And is that where folks are willing to go? Really? Then who are you even? Like, your identity is owned by this organization. And they're going to lead you down this path? Like, when you was at a yard down south and you knew it was going to be funky when you went out there because some dudes were going to be like, you got to keep your t-shirt on and this and that and all this other stuff. I know of several people that went to the brothers and was like, bro, I need some steel. I need something. There you go. Right? Come on now. Just the other, a couple weeks ago in Salinas Valley. Granted, things got carried away, but when that cat came out the cell, Jake catted out and took off on a homeboy. Who jumped to the defense? Took off on the security post, right? Who jumped to the defense? A black dude. A black dude jumped on that black dude because that black dude jumped on a northerner. Not jumped on a brown guy, jumped on a Norteño. And he was like, oh, bro, that's out of pocket. What you doing? Right? There's history there. And I know the relationship is fragile because of this whole kumbaya nonsense happening in the state. And I don't say nonsense because I'm against the kumbaya. I say nonsense because it's a hustle. And who's going to benefit from this? if the NF sends Norteños to war with blacks because of something that happened to a Mexican Mafia member, folks really need to question who they riding with, like what they are, what they ride with. You're just then a tool of the organization. You have no identity. You have no pride. You have no history. You're just whatever they want you to be in the moment. I don't know, man. That's not consistent with what I was taught in there. Now, granted, when I was in there was no NF on New York. So we moved a little different. There was a movement. There was a cause. There was a struggle, and it was a struggle. Not a struggle that the NF participated in because it was all validated. Not a struggle that, even for the South, like to flip roles, even for the South, not a struggle that the Mexican Mafia dealt with. It was all validated. About a struggle that Norteños and Sureños, Northerners and Southerners dealt with. And carried the burden of. And took the risk for, and the consequences, and all that other stuff. So the idea that there's a season, and a season that hopefully lasts forever, in which North and South, Norteños and Sureños, not the organizations, Northerners and Southerners, Norteños and Sureños, can coexist peacefully on a yard, that is a beautiful thing. I love it. I loved it when I was in prison and I was on a yard and it wasn't funk on site. That was great. It was stressful during wartime, right? Prison stressful. It was less stressful, not during wartime, but that is great because there's no reason to be beefing. These organizations had beef. We're a product of that. Now they're over there playing with each other's elbows. So what the hell we fighting for? Each other, right? What we fighting each other for? Pride and ego and that kind. Okay, cool. Well, we can mature and grow beyond that. And you could be proud of where you're from, and I could be proud of where I'm from, and we could not beef with each other because we're from different places, because that doesn't make any sense, because we actually have a lot more in common than we have different, right? And there are differences. There's cultural differences with the geography difference, this and that. There are some differences. But we have a lot more in common than we have different. What do we have in common with them? We're the workers. They're the CEOs. What do the workers have in common with the CEO? I work for a multinational organization, right? Corporation in the streets, like a legitimate one. The CEO doesn't come from Japan and come hang out with us as workers. And even when they walk around, they're not mingling. They're not associated. We're not going out to eat together or whatever. We're not in the same class. We're different, right? We're related, but we're different. I love us that are similar getting along. But again, to go to war because one of them got hit, period, would be weird. But hit by a black dude? And again, the blacks don't run the Northern program, never have. Blacks don't run the Norteno program. Very different program. So I'm not like, oh, we should cater to the Africanos. Nah, not at all. Never did my time that way. I don't ride that way, right? And I wouldn't encourage that. People got to do their own program, do their own time, rock with their own people. And for the last 40 years, the blacks in general have been more the Norteños people in general than the Mexican Mafia. Are you serious? Again, I hope this is an isolated thing, man, but in case you tapped in and fast forwarded, kind of missed the beginning, yeah, the South Side's busted a move, which I'm not surprised. And they hit the black dude that hit the Emerald before in High Desert, and they hit other black dudes, and the black dudes reacted. They didn't just run away and lay down, of course. And we'll see where it goes from there. But the Mexican Mafia fight ain't the Norteño fight, and that wasn't a race thing. That was not black versus brown. That organization is making it that for themselves. I don't know, man. It's got me feeling some type of way, you know. And so again, I hope people are gonna take from this what they want, you know. And if you want to view it as I'm gangbanging, you're gonna view it that way. You'd be foolish to do so. You're ridiculous if you think that. You clearly are unfamiliar with me, my channel, and my life. Um, but some people are gonna choose to take it that way, and that's fine. And others like, oh, radical degenerate now, and this and that, and you can take it that way too. I don't care. Right? I never blocked it up, never PC'd up, never told on nobody, never did none of that. I came home and I'm my own man, and I'm proud of that. But I'm also from where I'm from, and so I have some thoughts and feelings about it. And I'm a YouTube content creator, and I'm gonna speak my mind, and I'll be damned who likes it and who doesn't. Um, Shout out to the Southsiders, man, and I mean that sincerely, not just superficial. Like, oh, let me just say that. I got Southsiders that are real friends, like real good, personal, close friends. Um, I it's all love on my end. It really is, and it always has been. Not always in history, but it it has been for decades, right? But I don't respect the NF and I don't respect the Mexican Mafia, and I think that their existence and their presence is harmful to us as the regular folks. And I feel for the people in prison right now that got to listen to this bullshit and that got to jump. Otherwise, you could end up like Isaac and get murdered, or like Lil Rascal and get murdered, or like any other number of homeboys that have been murdered for betraying an organization. There's some nerve. What is it when an organization sends you to go defend the Mexican Mafia? Sacrifice, catch time, shed blood against people that you program with and play basketball with and handball with and in the streets, you know, rock very comfortably with and like, come on, man. Really? Again, I hope it doesn't happen. But the writing's kind of on the wall, right? And anyways, help others move with excellence, man. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community, however you define that. Whether it's just your family, the little people that live in your apartment or your house, or your whole city, your whole state, the whole country, whatever. Help your community, man, because they need you, you know. And you'll see me back on YouTube later on today. Take care.